Hey guys, it's Eric here at Farpoint Farms. Check it out. I honestly did not think that I would ever be making another video on the Choyong LC90, but they just released the 4.7 update for this, and I had felt compelled to make another video on this. I've owned two of these radios now, and I've come to really like them. They are a hybrid. They're probably the only radio that I know of that offers shortwave general coverage. It gets 10-meter ham, that kind of stuff. But so it's a general coverage plus shortwave plus AM plus longwave plus FM, and that is mixed with probably the most comprehensive internet radio that I've ever seen. And that's why I'm making this video. This update adds so many features to the internet side of things while also fixing a few of the bugs in the shortwave side of things that, I mean, it's just really incredible what they're doing with this stuff through software. This newest update offers the expansion. So a lot of the complaints that these things had was when we did a voice search, hey, WPTF, and it would be like, huh, and it would come up about half the time, for me anyway, it would come up with the right answer. The other half of the time it'd come up with some random stuff. Turns out it's because they were using a AI system that was used to using Chinese language, and so it had difficulty understanding English language. And so what they've done is they use ChatGPT AI, like voice recognition now, and it is spot on. I mean, it is incredible. You can search for anything and it comes right up, including the Midnight Cafe, my own podcast, my own radio show. The older episodes are on there. I'm not even sure how they got on there, to be honest with you, but they're out there. So they have added through voice search the ability to look for stations, WBCQ, WRMI, whatever it is you're looking for, you can now voice look for it. And then they also added, and this is where I kind of tipped my hat a second ago, podcasts, and I'm talking thousands and thousands of podcasts. I'm not sure if they're using Spotify or iTunes or whatever program it is they're getting their podcasts from, but it is an seemingly endless supply of podcasts. And so I'm going to pull the camera closer in here in a second and show you the new features and functions. But I just want to point out that when this came out and I made my first video on this, I got quite a bit of hate on this thing. I guess that perhaps some of you out there couldn't see what I could see in this radio. Did it need a little bit here and there to make it even better? I guess yes, but to be honest with you, at the time when they released this radio, it was still so groundbreaking in the fact of having the internet side of things along with the regular radio side of things that I felt it was the perfect radio. And every time they update this thing, I feel like it's the perfect radio again. This time it is hard for me to go through this radio and find any faults in it as far as like what's missing. It's just incredible what they have packed in here, what they have added in here, and I'm really impressed with this thing. Let's get the camera closer in and I'll show you why I think this still is the best radio out there in 2025. Let's do it. All right, so let's get into it. The biggest change right out of the gate is podcasts. It's incredible. It's incredible. If you want, so they've changed the language, right? So some of the complaints, myself included, said that before, when you would try to do a voice search, you had about, like for me, I had about a 50% success rate with voice search. It would sometimes pull up random stuff. But now they're using ChatGPT, they say. And so you hit that and it says use tag, right? The Midnight Cafe. And it goes out and searches. And there it is, right there, the Midnight Cafe. So I can hit that and favorite it if I want to. I'll go ahead and entered it in, right? Now I've got it, and that's going to play starting from the newest episode back, so you can scroll through. So they even have my podcast on here, and that's kind of impressive to me anyway. But they have a ton of others. Like one of the requests I made from Choyong was Art Bell. I'm a huge fan of Coast to Coast Radio and Art Bell, and so I asked them to do that, and I said let's get in here. So let me go back to podcast. We're going to search again. Oops, let's go into podcast and we'll search Art Bell. And you're going to see they definitely, right? Look at all this. Oh, yeah. So some of this stuff goes into other stuff that has art in it, but Coast to Coast. And then we have so many different choices, and I'm going to take a chance here, make sure there's nothing going on here, but let's go ahead and hit enter on that. I am going to favorite it too once it loads up, because this is one of my favorite channels. But
industrial design in college, then pursued his aviation career, flying airplanes, seaplanes,
incredible, huh?
gyroplanes.
So if you are a fan of vintage talk radio, of the best era of talk radio, then this update alone is just incredible. Of course, there's tons of other podcasts. Honestly, I don't follow a ton of podcasts except for like the tiny ones. I'm not going to go through it, but you can go through and you can see that now they've broken this stuff down into so many different ways of searching for. So if you're just looking for something like, I don't know, let's get into science and nature, business management, automotive, music, technology, sports. Let's get into news and see what comes up for news. Yeah, Court Junkie, the Lincoln Project. I mean, this list, I'll go through it somewhat slowly. I could spend the rest of my life going through these. And there are just thousands of them, thousands and thousands. All right, cool. So that's that. News, we've been through this before. Radio stations catering to news, BBC World Service. Matter of fact, we'll go ahead. I'll roll through a few, but let's go ahead and enter into that just so you can see that those internet radio stations are also still working beautifully.
Forced thousands of people to flee their homes. Earlier on the program, we heard from Alex Perlman, one terrified resident.
Pretty cool, huh? All right, let's move along here. Let's get into some of the other stuff you might want to play with. So I want to go into menu here, right? And I want to search just the radio stations, internet radio stations. So I hit enter there, and I long press language. So when we're doing podcasts, we use tag. When we're doing radio stations, we do language. WBCQ. And let's see if we can find that. 680 WPTF. All right, and so I don't think that our Raleigh area WPTF is in here, but you can see how many 680. So if you're in whatever town you're in, you have just narrowed it down to listening to, hey, I want to hear, there's a shortwave station in there as well. And so you can use this to narrow down your searches. You can search by city or by state, but some of the states have quite a bit going on there. So I feel like it's pretty nice when you can go ahead and narrow it down to a radio station that you're specifically looking for. And not all radio stations are listed here. As you saw, WPTF is actually not on this list, but it certainly helps.
The Panama Canal, the DJT Canal. So let's stop renaming everything. What do you think, Jeff?
I love it. I love it.
So you can find just about anything you want to on this thing. And if you like it, hit the favorite. And you can see now the favorite sign has come up. I can go right back to that. It's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do next, I just wanted to show you that because honestly, to me, the fact that they've added podcasts, let me also show you, I guess, before we go on to the next step here. Let's get into menu. We used to have it by country or region and then state or whatnot, but now we have our radio stations done out in ways like this where, again, it's kind of like the podcast. We have them categorized in ways to narrow down what we're looking for. And so let's go into news here, and it'll bring up, the aggregator brings up a bunch of radio stations. It's not just your podcast. You can see some of his podcasts, but we do get in, if you keep going and going on, into radio. Honey Badger Radio, Glenn Beck. And so you can see what we got here is just a pile. An endless pile. And of course, again, now if you want to, let me get back out of this. We go back into menu. If I press search now, it's telling me to hit language instead of tag. Glenn Beck. All right, and it's going to find the Glenn Beck shows, hopefully. There we go. And here are stations that carry anything related to Glenn Beck, right? So 7:40 a.m. It's Alaska. Cool. Let's check that one out real quick. I'm always able to go into the AM stuff because very rarely are they playing copyrighted music.
For tonight, rain and snow likely after midnight. Not much accumulation. Lows in the middle.
Audio quality on this radio, of course, is awesome. If you've seen my other two videos on this, you'll already know this. If you own one of these, like the very first thing you should do after watching this video is update it, because this completely changes the game for this radio. And I don't want you to think that all the improvements that have happened to this radio have been on the online portion of it, although in this particular update, a lot of them have. But some of the updates on this particular one have also helped with shortwave, specifically sideband stuff. The bandwidth, I think, is still a little narrow, but it certainly is a huge improvement over the 5.4, which this unit had on it before. 5.5's got a lot of improvements. I didn't really feel the need to get those improvements, but this one here integrates that 5.6 and the 5.7 updates all into one. So what I'm going to do next is let's go ahead and hook this thing up to the long wire antenna outside, and let's see what kind of stations we can pick up. Because I think in my last video I focused so much on just the internet stuff. People were like, yeah, but you didn't even try to get an actual station. And then I want to make sure that people understand that this is still above and beyond. It's an FM, midwave, shortwave, you know, it's a general coverage receiver. That being said, and I think I've said it in my last video, I've been a little disappointed in the midwave reception on this one, but shortwave and FM, it does excellent. All right, let's check it out. All right, so here we are. Got the radio hooked up to a long wire antenna. And before I even talk about the new features there, I do want to point out something here. I just got it on 11.930. And got a nice clear signal coming in from there right now. Some people have talked about how this radio they didn't think had the best reception on shortwave. I really don't feel like that's an issue. I mean, is it the most sensitive receiver I've ever worked with? No. But it's also definitely far, far, far from the worst. I think considering the other features that this radio comes with, it really does offset the fact that the AM band is not the greatest, and shortwave is a little above average, but not spectacular by any means. Anyway, I do want to show you the best part, my favorite part about this radio when it comes to stations. If I press menu and I press the heart button, I've got my favorite stations, and this is part of the update as well, and they've done this, and it's been, I think they did this in 4.5, but so we don't just have stations, we have our podcast, but it's breaking down our favorites into different things. So I can go directly into shortwave and see the stations that I like, right? And I don't know, let's see if there's anything on CB band right now. It may or may not be coming in. Nope, doesn't look like there's anything there, but that's okay. There's tons more stations here. You know, some of these I've just now really starting to do the shortwave ones. I've been working on podcasts and you know, music stations, internet stations, but now the fact that we can do it with everything, it's just been kind of neat. Let's go to 930. That's usually the overcomer this time of day. That might be a little hard for you to hear that, but it gets a little staticky. We're getting a pretty good snowstorm right now, but yeah, it's working out. Okay, so the other thing I want to show you here, and I got to be real careful, is I'm going to go to FM. And you can hear I'll turn it up for a second. But you can hear we have RDS radio system here, so that's a new thing. We got ID, you know, it's a news station, it's identifying where it's from. I mean, that's a pretty cool new trick that they've come up with. A lot of people requested that. And of course, a lot of my viewers are from Europe, and they're using a totally different radio system now, and so they want to know if they have the digital version, but we don't offer the digital. We don't have that in the United States. We have HD radio, but it's totally different from what you guys have over in Europe. As far as I know, this radio is not compatible with that. So I know I get a lot of questions about that, and I'm sorry, but as far as I know, this one's not HD radio compatible. It's not European digital compatible. RDS is a new trick, and you can see, you know, the scroll here for this thing dropping it off. So pretty awesome. All right, well, let me go back to the bench and we'll wrap this thing up. Well, that's it, my friends. I hope you understand why I made this follow-up video. It is probably highly unusual for someone to take a software update and make an entire video out of the fact that, hey, guess what? They did an update. I've owned a Roku for like 30 years now or whatever it's been, and there's plenty of updates. None of them really impress me all that much. They're kind of tweaks in the background. This is right in the foreground. If you go on to Facebook and follow the LC90 forums, if you go and leave comments on this video, the folks that make these radios, they read every single one of them. and they actually are listening to what you have to say, and they're actually implementing those fixes. I'm trying to think of another radio company that does that. I mean, we as a group have asked for a lot out of stuff over the years. I know myself been begging for just about every radio manufacturer to come out with a CB base station, and I'm still waiting on it. In the meantime, at least Choyong and their LC90, they actually listen and they actually do improve their product over and over again. I guess I'll leave it at that. Take care, my friends.
Everything in between.
I'll see you next time.
Together, perhaps we'll make a little sense of this crazy world we all live in.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Midnight Cafe. I'm your host, Eric, and tonight, for the July 4th weekend here in the United States, we have a pretty interesting show lined up. We're gonna take a tour of maybe not so much